to life.
He still paints the field? Yep. Love it. Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W's, so gotta be around the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You are fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby! Really proud of you, man. You drove your butt off tonight. We had the best start here, bud. Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job. Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend. What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark, and I appreciate you tuning in on this Saturday night of college football and Xfinity racing and all the fun stuff going on. If you happen to watch the Xfinity race, it was exactly what Kansas is. Long green flag runs with lots of strategies involved. Wyatt, what's up, big dog? Welcome to the pole position. You grabbed it. You were first in, and you got the crown. How about that? But either way, welcome aboard. We are headed to the land of Oz. I don't think we'll see Dorthey. No chance of tornadoes. In fact, it'll be a nice warm day, little breeze, out in the heartland of Kansas for this Hollywood Casino 400. Should be an exciting race. Kansas always provides good action for this next-gen car with most mile-and-a-half tracks. So quite excited to get into this and see who was fast in practice, who wasn't, and who did well in qualifying and who didn't. But before we do, let's go back to the Northeast and see who took home the lobster. Missed practice and qualifying. How was Larson looking? He was good. Solid run. Not the fastest, but I think overall he probably had the best speed, and he actually ended up being the control car for the practice grid that I do. So we'll see lots of Larson speed in this breakdown. But either way, who grabbed the lobster? The guy we expected to grab the lobster. Old Ryan Blaney, fastest in practice, fastest all around all day. In fact, all of Team Penske, as expected, was extremely fast. I wasn't quite expecting Josh Berry to be as good as he was. Even after spinning, he came back to finish second and definitely gave Blaney kind of a run for the money towards the end of that race. So good for Ryan Blaney, good for Team Penske. Not so good for my Draftkings, because I definitely did not think that 1, 2, 3 would be in the optimal lineup. Yeah, the first, second, and third starting position ended up making the optimal lineup. I don't ever remember a time where first, second, and third all ended up in the optimal lineup. I went back and looked, and there's not been in the next gen era, that's for sure. And I don't remember the last time that Penske or Penske affiliate teams finished 1, 2, 3. So, boy, Penske was set up to win that race, that is for sure. And I definitely did not have enough of the three drivers together. That I'm not sure anybody did, actually. But either way, good for them. Chase Elliott with a solid 5th place finish coming from 27th. Austin Dillon and Noah Gragson rounding up the optimal lineup. Christopher Bell, Larson, Briscoe, Byron, Gilliland, McDowell with an 8th place finish after qualifying in the 11th spot. But all in all, Chase Elliott has now really separated himself at the top of the optimal lineup challenge. After 30 races, he now has 11 optimals. And hopefully nipping at on his butt is Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, Ross Chastain, William Byron, and Bubba Wallace rounding it out. We'll have to wait and see. We're down to just almost a handful of races at this point. We've got 4, 5, 6 races, so just over a handful of races left to go in this season. All right, that's enough for Loudon in New Hampshire. Did not turn out the way I was hoping it to. I mean, I still made I think, over half my money back. So anytime you can do that with DFS, NASCAR, it's not all that bad. But either way, Kyle Larson was very dominant at the spring race here last year and has always been very dominant at Kansas, along with most of the Hendrick guys, including the Toyota Gibbs cars. And true enough, after a dominant performance last week with Penske, Penske kind of missed the boat for practice and qualifying. Maybe an opportunity for some Draftkings points, but I wouldn't be too quick to pull the trigger on that. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but we are headed to Kansas. This is a intermediate D-shaped or tri-oval. Track length is 1.5 miles in length. It has got progressive banking and the corners from 17 degrees to 20 degrees. This race length is 267 laps. At least one dominator / finishing position, along with probably 2 other finishing positions. So what I mean by that is guys that we think are going to probably finish in the top 5 in the race. This is kind of just set up very equally balanced. It's typically at least one dominator, 2 finishing positions, 3 guys that will make up the rest with place differential / maybe a finishing position. But either way, 186.9 points of dominator points available, 66.75 of laps led, fast laps of 120.15. Other tracks to compare to, if you're going back to look at stuff, you can look at Texas, Vegas, Charlotte, and Miami. Miami is more of a true oval than Vegas, Texas, and Charlotte, though. But you could always keep those in mind when you're looking at stuff. Either way, our optimal lineups from previous Kansas races, when we look at it, Kyle Larson in the spring race was very, very dominant, leading 221 of 267 laps. Very dominant. Started on the pole, finished in first. Then we didn't really have any other dominators, but we did have 2 other drivers finishing in the top 5, Alex Bowman and Chase Briscoe. Corey Heim scoring his first optimal lineup in one of his first next-gen runs here in the spring race. We had Josh Berry and Ryan Preece also rounding it out. But as always, you always want to kind of keep track of where this little highlight number is on the pricing. Chase Briscoe at $8,200 at 58.6 for this race. We had Martin Truex Jr. at $9,500 at about 64.55. And this will come in handy when we start to break down the drivers and look to see what they need to get and what they don't need to get to be in your what I would be considered to be a core group. And once again, if you've missed previous episodes, a core group would be your top 15 drivers that you think have the best opportunity to potentially be in the optimal lineup. Then have typically a sub-core group, which is probably another 5 to 7 drivers that I will substitute into that core group when I'm doing a build, just depending on how pricing works out. And then that kind of leaves another 14 or 15 drivers that I will leave out of most of my lineups. There'll be a small hint of other drivers, just depending on how things kind of work when you build your lineups, if you build them by hand, which I recommend. I hand build all of my lineups. So the fall Kansas race, the one year ago, was won by Ross Chastain, only leading 52 laps, but Christopher Bell leading 122 laps, finishing in 7th. But we had 2 drivers that finished in the top 5. Everybody else finished 7th through 16. But Chase Elliott with a huge place differential from 38th to 9th. Ryan Preece from 37th to 16th. That would definitely put them in there. But 64.55 points was the point total from that race. So around 64 points, around 58 points. And we kind of get an average here. In the spring race of 2024, Chris Buescher was 70 points. We did have kind of a mix of, didn't really have a dominator, but Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, and Chris Buescher all having lots of laps led. And they all finished one in the top 5, first, fifth, and second. And 70 points was kind of the point total we kind of were looking at that. And then 61 points here. So about 65 points. If you've got a driver that you think is going to get to 65 points, then you probably definitely want to keep them in a fair amount of your lineups, like 30%, 30 to 50% of your lineups. D Pope, Roll Tide. Yeah, what are they at right now? That's not up right now. I think it's a close game. I do know that. It's in commercial break for me here. So I'm a Virginia Tech Hokie fan, and I've got that one over here. They're playing NC State and only down by 1. So with firing their head coach a couple weeks ago and actually performing well, it's going okay. But I've got all of them on. Bama before half, up 17-14. Okay. We'll keep an eye on the Roll Tide game. I know that the other big game is Penn State and Oregon with their big whiteout. It's always so impressive to see, I don't know, what is it, 85,000 fans in that stadium all wearing white. It's almost obnoxious, to be truthful, but good for them. Good team spirit. But we're talking NASCAR. All right, our top 15 point getters for the last 4 Kansas race and their average starting spots. So we're typically looking at 4.8 that are starting in the top 10, 3.2 of those starting in the top 5, another 4.2, 11 through 20 starting spots, and 4.2, 21 through 30 spots, and only a 1.8 of drivers coming from 31st or worse. So this is much, much equally balanced all the way through 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and 21 through 30. So kind of keep that in mind. The bulk of your stuff is going to come starting better than 30th. Dominators per race, we're looking, like I said, probably about 1 to 1.5, and some of that's going to be finishing position. Place differential, we've got a 7.6 amount of drivers have place differential per race. It's just always this, more data is always the better. So typically, like I said, we're looking at 9, 9, 8, and 6 drivers with place differential, and really it's just about 1 driver per race that are dominators. So kind of like I said, it's 3 guys that are place differential drivers, 2 drivers that are going to finish, kind of in that top 5, and then 1 driver who's going to dominate and probably end up winning the race. All right, that's our breakdown, but as you can see, the point total is about 34 to be in the top 15 in points, and this is kind of held true pretty much all season long. So I'm going to kind of stick to this, and this to be my barometer of where I want drivers to fall and how I grade them and keep them or take them out of my lineups. Okay, this is our driver detail page, and we'll kind of go through Kyle Larson in a little bit more detail. He is the most expensive driver on Draftkings, $11,000. He is starting in the 3rd position. His practice speed, he was 12th overall in single lap time. He did 25 total laps of practice. He was 3rd in 10 lap consecutive average. So that's 10 consecutive laps without coming to pit road to make adjustments on the car. And he was 3rd overall out of the 37 drivers. Ooh, that was a nasty hit. He does have 2 wins over the last 5 races here at Kansas. So this line here goes with this line here. So it's the last 5 races at Kansas. And Kyle Larson has 2 wins, 4 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 4 top 20s, a 6.8 average finish, and a 75.1 DraftKings average, well above the 65 point total that we're going to shoot for. So just that alone is an indication that Kyle Larson is extremely good at this track and somebody to definitely keep an eye on. His average running position at those 5 races is 9.0, and that always kind of fluctuates a little bit different than their average finishing spot. And this is kind of how they were running throughout the race on average. And like we saw earlier, he did finish in 1st in the spring race earlier this year. 22 total starts here at Kansas, 3 wins. 10 of the 22 he's finished in the top 5, 13 times he's finished in the top 10, and 17 out of 22 in the top 20 with an 11.2 average finish. He has 41 points on the right side of the cut line for the playoffs. This will be kind of important, is whether they are going to be desperate for a win or not desperate for a win. Kyle Larson probably is not sitting on a panic point at this point. He just needs to go out and have a good points day, finish in the top 5, maybe lead some laps, get some stage points, and move on to the Roval and move on to the next round. He does have 3 wins on the season currently. All right, our practice speeds. Like I said earlier, Kyle Larson is the control car for for all of these breakdowns when we look at each driver. The white line is the average lap time. So on average, they were at about a 31.1 on fire off speed. And by lap about 26, 27, they're at a 32.1. So about a full second fall off is what we're looking at over a 30 lap run. We could probably see somewhere in the realm of about 50 laps, and I forgot to look to find out how many laps each stage is. Let me look at that real quick. That is important. Each stage, first stage is 80 laps, the second stage is 85 laps, and then we have a 102 lap shootout to the end. So the first stage will require at least 1 pit stop. They can't make it 80 laps on fuel, and they'll probably also need tires. So same thing in stage 2. We'll definitely have, if they stay green, we'll have a green flag pit stop. And then stage 3, you might be able to actually make that on a 50 and a 50. So depending on what they see for tire fall off in stage 1 and stage 2, on whether they make that a 2 stop in stage 3 or a 1 stop. It also depends on cautions. But if it's green flag the entire time, typically we're going to see 1 stop in each of the stages, and tire wear may come into play. They do have a new right side tire for this race that is different than the spring or any of the other tracks. This is an absolute new right side tire. It's supposed to be fairly durable, but have some fall off. And like we see here for practice, it's about a second per 30 laps. So we'll have to see once they get into that 40, 45 lap range on what the actual speed fall off is. I don't think it'll be much more than probably a 1.5 second fall off. So tires will be important, but not absolute. Typically, Kansas is one of those that track position is very, very important. It is a little bit difficult to pass. The aero blocking will absolutely come into play. We've talked about that almost every week. It's something that NASCAR really needs to kind of figure out with this next-gen car on how to get that aero block taken out. And honestly, I think Goodyear's done a great job coming up with some better tire combinations, but I think more horsepower might give drivers the ability to, if they have the ability with the tires, to actually get up and at least get alongside somebody. You can do that in the Xfinity car. And the tire is more narrow in the Xfinity car than the Cup car. So that makes it a little bit. So with this next-gen car, the wider tire, it just sticks to the track better, which gives you the ability to aero block. When you're both running same lap times and same speed, you can't just throttle up for one corner to try to get alongside somebody. And if you can get alongside somebody, you can then side draft or side arrow them, and which will actually kind of slow them down, and you can hopefully get into a passing position going into the next corner. There's lots of physics that come into play here, but track position will be of the utmost important. And Kyle Larson, starting in third, will start up pretty close to the front, so he'll end up firing off in a pretty good spot. Oh yeah, the other car. So if we look, so Kyle Larson is in black here for these practice speeds. And William Byron was probably the next closest in speed over practice that was the most consistent. And, other than about lap 15 through 20, 21, you can make an argument that William Byron also could have easily been the control car because his speed was actually much more consistent throughout the run, other than Kyle Larson. But I chose Kyle Larson because he won the spring race too, and I'm also a fan. So and it's my show, so I get to pick who the control car is. I mean, last week was Ryan Blaney, and typically a lot of times the control car ends up typically being the one that wins the race. So maybe go put some money on Kyle Larson. He's only 3.2 per dollar. So you bet $10, you win 32. I mean, profit's a profit, but all right. I mean, I don't think Kyle Larson is as strong and dominant of a choice as Ryan Blaney was last week. I mean, his speed was 0.2 faster than everyone else for all of practice, and it showed up in the race. All right. So let's put him on the calculator and figure out what does Kyle Larson need to do to get to that 60, 65 point range that we kind of need to get to probably be in the optimal lineup. Sorry. He's starting in the third position. If we look at his averages so this line here is the same track, so that's Kansas, in the last 5 races, which comes from that same first sheet we were just looking at. And he's got a 6.8 average finish. He's got his best finish is a first. He did that twice. And his worst is 26th place. But either way, 6.8. The last 5 trend. So this is the last 5 non-super speedway, non-road course. So typical oval, either short or 1.5 miles. This is the trend. He has a 7th place is his best finish, 32nd is his worst, and he's got an average of 17.8. Well, if we average the two of them together, he's got about an average of a 12th place finish. I think Kyle Larson probably is going to be slated much more closer to the 6.8 than the 12, but that's where this average comes in. It's the average of these two numbers, and then rounded. Close to that. But how does Kyle Larson either get to or not get to this 60 point or 34 point range? Well, if he finishes in 4th, it only has 5 fast laps, it's 41 points. Yeah, sure, it puts him in the top 15, but I'm not sure I want to spend $11,000 for somebody who's just going to be in the top 15. I need him to be in the top 6 and make the optimal lineup. So, with that being said, we move him up to first. Of course, he's going to have some laps led if he does that, and we'll start with 20. Probably will be more, but we'll start with 20. And 5 fast laps, that only gets us to 54.25, which really, honestly, is not enough for the optimal. It puts him in the top 15 in points, but not into the optimal. So, he's going to need 50 laps led. That puts him there. And if he leads 50 laps, he's probably going to have more than 5 fast laps. He'll probably have closer to like 25. 2-1. Well, that's a 70.75. Absolutely, that puts him into play. Now, what happens if Kyle Larson goes and leads 80 laps and has 40 fast laps? That's getting closer to or just right at or above his average for Kansas at 85 points. Now, what happens if he doesn't quite finish first? Let's say he slips and has a bad pit stop in the last one, or, just track position doesn't quite figure it out, but he led a bunch of laps in stage 2. And this is what we saw with Joey Logano. This is why Joey Logano and Josh Berry both made the optimal lineup last week, is they both had enough laps led and finished in the top 3, starting in the top 3, that pulled them over into the optimal lineup. Just rare to have first, second, and third all share lots of laps and both all finish in the top 4. So, but Kyle Larson, if he falls to 4th, still enough points. That's okay. All right. Fall to 8th. Still okay for probably an optimal. Can he go to 10th? Yep, still okay at 10th. At 65, we're getting close. 12 points puts him at 60. Like I said, that's really kind of getting close to that line, but he could start in 3rd, lead 80 laps, have 40 fast laps, and fall all the way to 12th, and still be okay. Anything worse than 12th, and he's going to definitely be out of the optimal lineup. And I'm not sure 60 actually gets Kyle Larson in the optimal lineup, but it's possible. just based on the numbers. So either way, I think Kyle Larson is a very, very good choice. He's going to probably be top 5 in ownership. I expect him probably to be in the 35-40% range of ownership. We've got 2 other drivers that are going to gobble up a lot of ownership from the Penske camp. So that those Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney both had troubles in practice. Both ended up with tire issues. What place does Larson need to do if he leads 40 laps? All right, well let's figure out. So if we go to 40 and we stay with the 2-for-1 fast laps to laps led, he needs to probably get to probably 5th, no, 4th, probably 3rd. Yeah, he's going to need to finish in 3rd. So double up the fast laps and laps led, and you can follow it all the way to 12th. But you don't, and you have to finish top 3. Does that help you out, little Rainey? Thanks for joining in. I appreciate you tuning in tonight on this Saturday night. But yeah, so top 3, lead 40 laps, and have 20 fast laps, and that gets you to 60. Like I said, I don't love the 60-point line for Larson. It's just kind of what the averages show. I think it's probably going to need to be probably closer to 65 for Larson, to be perfectly honest. All right, Ryan Blaney, our winner from last week, locked into the round of 8. So not a big deal that he had issues in practice. He does have to go to a backup car. He's starting in 37th, so even with the backup car, he's going to have to fall to the rear, which he's already there. Oh, you're going to the race tomorrow? Nice, Rainy. I'm so jealous. Oh, Virginia Tech with a big run back. Can they get to the touchdown? 20, 10, 5. Oh, tackled on the 2-yard line. Oh, well. Oh, and Bama's up 24-14. Roll Tide for Pope over here with a big commanding lead going into halftime. All right, that's enough of that. All right, so Ryan Blaney, he blew a tire in practice. He only did 4 laps of practice, was not very good in practice. Before that, he only got to 36th on the speed chart. And touchdown Hokies. All right. Sorry, I'm a Virginia Tech fan. It's been a tough season so far this year, so to have them scoring touchdowns is always a good thing to see. 10,700, starting in 37th. Lots of place differential here. But, buyer beware. There's a reason why he blew the tire, and why Penske almost blew all of their tires. Josh Berry said he didn't feel 100% comfortable in his car. Joe Logano had a tire issue, and Austin Cindric is the only one who seemed to have no tire issues, but was not really that fast in practice. He was okay, but not all that fast. So Penske could be in for a long day, but we'll put Ryan Blaney on the calculator in 1 second. Let's look at his stats. He's got a 9.4 average finish, starting in 37th. Lots of place differential potential here, but he is locked into the next round. So we'll have to be kind of curious to see what Ryan Blaney does. Ryan Blaney also was probably the best in the field at moving through the field throughout a race. So the one thing we could probably say for Ryan Blaney is he is probably not going to have a lot of laps led or fast laps, but you never know. So our practice speeds were not good and dead at that point, or his car was dead, not him. No real data here to look at. So let's put him on the calculator. If he starts 37th, he's not going to lead 100 laps. That one I can pretty much go to the bank on. We're not going to give him any. We'll give him 5 fast laps just to be nice. We'll give everybody 5 fast laps just to be nice. If he finishes in 14th, it's only 54.25 points. Well, that doesn't quite get you to 60. So he's going to need to get to a top 10. Probably 11th, actually. 11 points would get him to 60. So realistically, we need to see Ryan Blaney get a top 10. Well, his average is a 9.4. In the last 5 races, it's also a 9.0. So probably a decent opportunity for, if Ryan Blaney can make his way through the field safely, that he can get to a top 10 finish. So I think Ryan Blaney stays in the grouping, but with his price tag, he is going to need to get to a top 10. It's not going to be one of those where he can just kind of cruise around and finish in 15th, and because he's cheap enough, ends up making the optimal lineup. That's not going to be the case. He's going to need to race his way up to a top 10. I mean, very plausible. Like I said, his average finish at Kansas is a 9.4. So I will still keep Blaney in my grouping, but it's one of those. It's not just an absolute shoe-in because, if he finishes 16th, it's only 50 points. I mean, it's a good day. It's a top 15 in DraftKings points, but it's not optimal. At 10,700, that's a lot of salary cap to be giving up to only be in the top 15 in points and not in the top 6. So, Denny Hamlin next in line here at 10,500, starting in second. Denny was very good in practice. He was third in single lap, ninth in 10-lap consecutive average. He does have one win here at Kansas, and his stats are nearly almost as good as Blaney and Larson, with 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, a 10.4 average finish. His running position is actually a little bit better at an 8.7. He did finish 36th in this race in the spring, so that's not so great. 5 wins on the season, plus 27 to the cut line. This needs a solid, good day, and Denny does know that. He's talked about it lots in his interviews this week. Oh yeah, lots of fun stuff between he and Ty Gibbs last week. That's been the talk of the garage this week. And if we look at his practice speeds, I mean, he's definitely a little bit faster in some spots than Larson, and a little bit slower in some spots, but not far off. He could easily be a player here. It's going to be a challenge between Hamlin and Larson to see who actually leads a ton of laps. And there still is somebody sitting on the pole who could be a little pesky, and has been good at these 1.5-mile style tracks. We'll get to him in just a moment. 10,500 starting in second. He's got an average finish here at 10.4, and over the last 5 races, 11.6, so probably about an 11th place average finish, but we're not going to go there. We're going to leave him in the first spot. We're going to think that he's going to be very similar to Larson, starting in third. It's going to have to be probably about 70, 80 laps. We'll put him at 70. We'll stick with the theory of a 2-for-1 for fast laps. 35 at 79.25. That easily puts him there. He could probably fall to 9th or even 10th. So, yeah, 9th or better. And that's the difference between starting in third and second and leading some laps and not leading some laps. The only thing that concerns me about Denny Hamlin is he has been a little inconsistent, I feel, lately. He either goes out and wins and dominates, or he kind of struggles all day. I mean, and when I say struggle, he'll still end up kind of pulling off a 10th place finish, but starting on the pole or outside pole probably doesn't work. I mean, you'd have to lead some laps for it to potentially work. So I don't mind the Denny Hamlin play. I mean, you can say the same thing about Larson. They've had their struggles as of recently of having solid, consistent, dominating type performances. Denny did pull off a win at Gateway. I don't mind the Denny Hamlin play. I'm not negating that at all. I think I like the Larson play slightly better than the Denny Hamlin play. I'm also a Larson fan, so there is that. But, I mean, Denny could easily dominate this race. I don't think we're going to see anybody like Larson-esque of 200-plus laps led. I think it's going to be much more of we're going to have 3 drivers kind of share a lot of laps led. Is kind of my theory on this. And, I mean, Denny Hamlin and Larson could easily both share that 70, 75, 80 laps led, both finish top 10, and both potentially make the optimal lineup. So I don't mind the Denny Hamlin play at all. I think I will probably be somewhere in the 30-35% ownership range, where with Larson I'll probably be 35-40%. So it's going to be close to that. And I'm going to probably be pretty even on the field. like I said, Ryan Blaney's going to have a ton of ownership because of his starting spot. Yeah, Lorraine, I think we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago, or sometime recently. Somebody said they were from the Kansas area, and we've got a family farm in Holton. I don't know if you know where Holton is. It's about an hour north of Topeka, or about 45 minutes north of Topeka. So I definitely need to make it out to a Kansas race here one of these years. All right, Christopher Bell next in line here, 10,200, starting in the 5th position. He was 17th in single lap, 5th in 10-lap consecutive average. Does not have a win in the last 5 races. In fact, he doesn't have a win here at Kansas at all. Only in the last 5 races, 1 top 5, but 4 top 10s. Pretty consistent top 10 finisher here for Christopher Bell. 11.8 average finish and an 8.8 average running position. He does have 4 wins on the season. He is plus 29 to the cut line. He did finish 2nd in this race last year. And practice speeds, pretty similar to Larson. I mean, the Gibbs and Hendrick cars were very, very consistent in practice and very, very close together. I honestly think that this is going to be a very heavy Hendrick Gibbs type of race. And I think Penske may struggle to really crack the top 10. Just my honest opinion, I think Blaney might have the best chance of doing it. And starting in 37th, that may be a little bit of a struggle. So we'll see. But let's put Christopher Bell on this little chart. If we look at the average finish, it's about 13th. Starting in 5th, he would definitely need to lead some laps to make it up there. But let's just say he starts in 5th, finishes in 5th. How many laps led would Christopher Bell have to have? And you got to remember, if we think Denny Hamlin goes out and leads 60 or 70, and Larson leads 60 or 70, we're starting to dwindle down on potential laps to be led at this point. But maybe they don't, and maybe Christopher Bell leads the 50 laps. And 25 over here. That's 62.75. He could start in 5th, finish in 5th, lead 50 laps, and have 25 fast laps. Well, that's above the 60-point optimal line. It puts him real close to being in that optimal. He's definitely in the top 15. I don't mind the Christopher Bell play. When I said before 35 to 40% ownership for like a Larson, 35% for Denny Hamlin, I think Christopher Bell kind of falls real close to that 30% mark. Maybe on just the positive side, like 31, 32%. But somewhere in that 30% range, I'm perfectly fine with Christopher Bell. I think he's more than capable. The Toyotas have been extremely fast as of late, except for last week at New Hampshire, but everybody was slow compared to Penske. All right, so Christopher Bell's in. In fact, all the drivers so far that we have talked about all have very good potentials of making the top 15 in points. Well, somewhere down the line, we've got to start to weed some people out here. We can't run everybody at $10,000 or more. It just doesn't fit. $10,000 for William Byron starting in 11th. So we've got some potential place differential here. Not a lot, because if we look at his average finishes here, he's got a 13.4 average finish. And he's only got 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s, 3 top 20s, with a finish of 24th in the spring. And 15 total starts here, only 3 top 5s and 8 top 10s. So pretty consistently kind of getting to that 12th place finish. He is 47 points to the good. So as long as William Byron doesn't have a bad day and just has a good, solid finishing day, I think William Byron will probably be in good shape for the playoffs. Now, what does that look like in regards to Draftkings? Well, starting 11th, like I said, he's got some place differential. And if we look at his practice speeds, we did see this on the Kyle Larson page. William Byron was extremely good, very close to Kyle Larson's speed. I could have easily put William Byron in this spot other than Kyle Larson. I think it was a toss-up. So starting in 11th, like I said, he's got the best chance for at least the guys that are starting up front of kind of moving up to the field. Well, if he finishes in 3rd, how many laps led would he need? Or actually, we'll give him we'll just give him 5 laps led, and we'll give him 10 fast laps. 54.75, still not enough. He's going to need to lead 25 laps. 59.75, still not enough. 40 laps and 20. That puts him at 68. That puts him in there. That's with a third place finish. But what happens if he gets his, let's say he just gets to 8th? Well, that's only 58. But if he doesn't lead any laps, because we think Larson, Hamlin, and those guys may end up absorbing a lot of those, but he does have the given 5 fast laps. I mean, it's only 41.25 points. So, probably fade off of William Byron just slightly, not a ton. I do like his practice speeds. I think the speed is there. But I think William Byron, if he doesn't think he can win or get that top 3, he's going to be satisfied with getting a top 10 finish and just moving on to the Roval with a plus 50, 55 point buffer going into the Roval to make it to the next round. So I think William Byron could potentially do some points racing and just looking to make it to the next round and try to get out of Kansas without anything causing or having a devastating race and being, right along the cut line. Where Tyler Reddick, we are already minus 23 points to the cut line in the playoffs. Tyler Reddick is going to have to come up with, we're almost in Hail Mary stage where you need to go win to get in. We're not there yet, but the Roval is just a very tough place to make up any points unless you qualify really well. And leaving it to qualifying at the Roval when you've got the likes of AJ Allmendinger and Shane Van Gisbergen out there, that's probably going to eat up a lot of the real large points. You cannot guarantee yourself going into the Roval that you need to make up points. So this is the spot where Tyler Reddick probably needs to make up some points. Well, he's starting in 12th. Practice speeds were 14th, and they fell off to 32nd in 10 lap. He does have 1 win here in the last 5 races, so he does know how to win here. He does know how to get around here fairly decently. 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 4 top 20s. So pretty consistent at 14.4 average finish. 12 total races here to 17.8. Like I said, he is minus 23 to the cut line, so they've got some work to do. And if we look at his practice speeds, they had a couple laps where they were fast, and then they kind of were just a little inconsistent, kind of right around that average line. Nowhere near as good and as consistent as the likes of William Byron and Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell. So that's a little concerning when we're looking at the Tyler Reddick. Putting him on the... Oh, I didn't talk to her. She doesn't need to talk back. It was the ALAXSIS, whatever, however you spell her name. Like Amazon thing. Starting in 12th, average finish of 11th. He's got a 10.6 here at Kansas and an 11.2 over the last 5 races here, or last 5 races of the season. So finishing in 12th, if you get the 10th, only have 3 fast laps. Well, we'll give him the 5 we give everybody. We'll be fair. That's only 38.25. That's barely in the top 15. So he's going to need to get to a top 5, and more likely Tyler is either going to finish outside the top 20 or he's probably going to finish in the top 5. They're gonna try to throw something at it if they're not doing well, which may end up hurting them or may end up helping them. So I think there's no real middle ground for the 2311 drivers. Reddick's in a worse spot than Bubba is, but I think they both still need to have really good points days, especially in the stages. So if there's an opportunity to flip a stage or do something like that to get points, they're going to take it. And I don't know if Tyler Reddick goes out and leads a ton of laps. I mean, it's possible. Starting in 12th, if he can lead 20 laps, give him the 10 on the fast laps for the 2-1. 5th place doesn't cut it still. He needs to get to 3rd. Not better than 3rd, really. He's going to have to probably win. 61 points. have 20 laps led, 10 fast laps. I just don't know if I see that in this practice speed that we're looking at. It's going to take some strategy to pull that off, and the 2311, especially the 45, they haven't won a race all year. They have not been super consistent. If anything, they've been very inconsistent this year. So I would put Tyler Reddick probably as one of my sub-core drivers, but at $9,700, it's just going to be tough to fit him into the lineups that I really want. Yeah, I mean, like I don't love the William Byron play, and I don't think I really love the Tyler Reddick play. Like I don't mind them playing. Touchdown NC State. Darn it. Still plenty of time. 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with Tyler Reddick. Chase Briscoe, the fastest man on Saturdays. Well, he's been able to pull the fastest man on Saturdays into the fastest man on Sunday also twice. And his practice speeds were okay. They weren't phenomenal. He does stand a really good chance of probably leading a little bit in that first stage. After that, it's a coin flip. And honestly, kind of what's been more consistent as of recent is how did Martin Truex Jr. also do at these tracks, and how did Chase Briscoe do at those tracks? And if both of them were doing really well at the same style track or same track, that typically meant Briscoe was going to end up having a pretty good day. Okay. Well, the average finish for Chase Briscoe over the last 5 races at Kansas is a 20th place average finish with a 24.7 average running position. He did finish 4th at the 19 car earlier this year. That's a bonus. And I think he actually may have started from the pole. I can't remember who had the pole in the spring race. We can look. Maybe. Yeah, we can look. Let's see. Cup 2025 Kansas. I think actually Larson may have started from the pole. Yeah, he did. Larson started from the pole. Briscoe started in 19th. So, but he moved up to 4th. Starting from the pole, though, it gives him the opportunity to lead some laps. It also gives him the better pit stall location in the first pit stop, or first pit stall off of pit road. Let's look at his practice laps. And, I mean, for the most part, he had a couple laps that he was faster than Larson. And not near as good as Denny Hamlin or Larson. So, yeah. And he did have a couple laps where he was not as fast, but okay, we could throw those out maybe. But then again, it's right at about the average line, but not as good as everyone else. So I think the aero block may work for him in the first little bit of... Yes, you were correct, Lorraine. Larson did have the pole last year and then dominated 221 laps. So, a little different scenario this time. I mean, Briscoe has also done this to me before where he starts on the pole and I'm like, oh yeah, Denny Hamlin will get out in front of him and take that spot away, and Briscoe goes out and leads most of stage 1. And then he'll have a bad pit stop somewhere, which hasn't been recently, but when he first was getting all the poles, he was not able to finish the race off where he needed to, especially for Draftkings. But Chase Briscoe, starting from the pole, let's put him on the calculator. Let's see. What does it do? And let's say he does go out and he leads. Let's say they split the stage in half and they go 40-40. And it's a green flag for the entire first stage, which has happened. But let's say somebody has a better pit sequence than Briscoe, and he isn't able to hold that first position through the second part of stage 1, and he leads just the 40 laps. and he doesn't get back to the front. But he has the 20 fast laps throughout the race. And he falls to 5th, it's 54 points. Not quite enough. Can he fall to 3rd and be okay? It's 58 points. At 9,500, it's possible. It's kind of a long shot. We'd have to see one driver dominate a lot. So a Larson or a Hamlin or something like that go out and lead a lot of the other laps for that to end up playing. All depends on the build. So what happens if he doesn't slip? Let's say he leads 80 laps. How far back could he fall? Let's say he gets to 40. 2-for-1 special. And he finishes in 3rd. Well, that's 77 points. How far down could he fall? About like Larson, about 12th place. So about 11th or 12th. For Briscoe. I will have some ownership in Briscoe. It's going to be depending on how he fits in. And once again, I don't love taking... Let's go look at the 4 optimal lineups from previous Kansas race. One person starting better than 19th, and that was Larson. And once again, one person starting better than 15th, which was Bell. And yeah, I mean, we're consistently only seeing one driver really in the top 10, except for the fall race of 2023, where we had 2 drivers starting in the top 5, and everybody else started 14th or worse. So, I mean, kind of the way things go is, yes, you can finish top 15 in points, starting 30th or better, but starting in the top 10, it's tough to make that optimal lineup. Not saying it can't be done, because I also didn't think we would see a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd make the starting spot, make the optimal lineup, and it happened last week. So, you know, I always like to see the trends and see kind of where things are falling. And yeah, I don't mind taking the Briscoe. I don't know. You know, it's really hard to say. I don't like taking like a Larson and a Briscoe, both starting in the top 3. Because that typically doesn't work. It did last week. But as we just looked at the previous 4 optimal lineups, it hasn't worked. So I'm not saying it can't work. I think you have to pick between Larson, Briscoe, or Hamlin. And then kind of build away from them with starting spots. Preferably probably outside the top 10. Sorry, big play for Virginia Tech Hokies. All right, we got college football going on everywhere. I think Bama's about ready to come back out of halftime, and we still have a tied game with Oregon and Penn State. All sorts of fun stuff. All right, so yeah, I don't mind the Briscoe play, but if I had to like rank 1 through 3, I'm putting Larson 1st, Hamlin 2nd, Briscoe 3rd, and you know, running it kind of 40, 35, 25 percentage-wise between those 3. Kind of probably how I end up building it. I think more than likely one of the 3 of them probably end up close to the optimal lineup. And Oregon scores a touchdown on Penn State at Penn State. Ooh, boy. That's big. Joe Logano, 9,200, starting in 35th. Ooh-wee. Like I said, the Penskes had some struggles in practice today. The tire wear, or the tire pressure that they were running definitely caused some issues with some blowouts. Logano was able to save his, but Blaney was not. So starting in 35th, Joey doesn't have to go to a backup car. He's probably going to have to go to the rear, because I think they probably end up having to do some unapproved adjustments, and that'll push him to the rear, which, I mean, he's starting 35th. So he'll go to 36. Not a big deal. And if we look at his practice speeds, he was 35th in single lap, 26th in 10 lap. He does have 4 wins here at Kansas, not in the next gen era though. 13.6 average finish. At least I don't think in don't think in the next gen era. He does not in the last 5. I can't remember going back further than that, and I'm not going to go back and look. I know he had a win. Was it Kansas or Vegas? In 2022, so that would have been next gen era. I think he finished in first in 22. But don't quote me on it. But either way, ton of place differential potential here. But if we look at his practice speeds, they were off in practice. He had only 1 or 2 laps that were at average. So that's concerning that they have missed the setup completely for both Logano and Blaney. Austin Cindric, when we get to him, looks better. So my guess is they'll take the data and setups from Cindric's car and probably put it into. So I think they're going to be okay. Now, question is, I'm not sure Cindric gets better than a top 15. So that probably puts Joe Logano and Ryan Blaney in that same spot. So when looking at the 3 of them, I mean, of course, Blaney and Logano would have more of the share because they're starting in 35th. But they're both going to be very heavily owned. Logano was only plus 24 to the cut line. If he does not get into the top 20, that is going to evaporate very, very quickly. So he's going to need to be cautious, but also aggressive in this race, where Ryan Blaney could be like, well, I'm already into the next round, regardless of what I do in this race. So, oh, come on, get rid of the ball. Oh, nice. What a catch. Sorry. And now I hear my family yelling in the background. I'm slightly ahead of them, I guess, in the TV broadcast. But starting in 35th, how far up can Joe Logano go and be in the optimal? He's not going to lead a lot of laps, and we'll give him the token 5 fast laps. Well, 12th place gets him to 56.25, and I think at 9,200, I think the optimal line falls to about 55 points. So that would probably be enough. But 13th would not be. So he's going to need to finish more than likely a top 10. And I don't know if I love Joe Logano getting to a top 10. Not saying it's not possible. I just don't love it. He has a 13.6 average finish with a best finish of 5th in the last 5 races here. So I like Blaney more for a place differential than I do Joey Logano, and I think that's probably going to be the case in lineup builds. Now, what is that? I mean, I think Ryan Blaney is probably going to be 50% owned, where I think Joey Logano is probably going to be 35-40% owned. They're both still going to be heavily owned. In my lineups, I will probably be underweight on Joey Logano, or probably be under that 35%. Now, it'll probably be 25-30%, but I'm not going to be close to the 35, 40, 45% owned that I think Joey Logano is going to be. Now, the Ryan Blaney play, I will probably be at about the same amount of ownership. I'll probably be closer to 50. I might be slightly under at 45%, but I don't mind. And the thing is, Ryan Blaney, doesn't matter what he does, he's on to the next round. Joe Logano has to have a good, solid finish. I don't know, risk versus reward between the two. And both of them could finish 20th and not be in the optimal lineup at all. So there is that possibility. And that's why I don't think I'll have a ton of ownership with the two of them. Now, will I have ownership on them? Absolutely. I think you're crazy not to. But I think I'll be slightly underweight. But I could also understand if you're running 20 lineups, that you put Joey and Brian Blaney mixed and matched in 12 or 13 lineups. I don't think you want to go 100% on either one of them. But I think you're crazy not to. I think I'll be slightly underweight. But I could also understand if you put if you're running 20 lineups, that you put Joey and Brian Blaney mixed and matched in 12 or 13 lineups. I don't think you want to go 100% on either one of them. Just because if they do have a blowout or a problem. Oh, Georgia came out firing. Pretty big run there. All right. Chase Elliott starting in the 4th position. Like I said, this is absolutely setting up for a Hendrick Gibbs Joe Gibbs Racing showdown tomorrow. Chase Elliott starting in 4th. So literally 1st and 2nd are Joe Gibbs. 3rd and 4th are Hendrick and Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott was not quite as fast as Larson in practice. He was 13th and 12th in laps. He has an average finish of 8th place average finish. Solid. 1 top 5 though, 4 top 10s, 5 top 20s. And out of 19 total starts at Kansas, he does have 1 win with a 10th place average finish. He has 14 points to the good on the cut line. He needs to have a good, solid top 10 day. And that's kind of the way Chase Elliott has got himself in this position of being just solid week in and week out. And that probably means like a 5th to 8th place finish. Starting in 4th, I'm not sure that plays out so well. If we look at his practice speeds, they're not bad. He really seems to slip a little bit at about lap 14 or 15 and falls off a little bit, but then ends up being slightly better the longer they run. Now, what caused that? It's kind of hard to say, but this is all the data we have to look at. So I think Chase Elliott is a good, solid top 10 finish, probably somewhere between 7th or 8th. But starting in 4th, finishing in 8th, not leading any laps, it's only 33 points. So he's going to need to lead some laps, or you need to think about not putting him in your lineups. The question is, you put him in lineups or you not put him in lineups? I will probably fade off of him slightly, because he's going to need to lead, let's say he leads 20 laps. Finish in 8th, it's a 39.25. If he can finish where he starts in 4th, it's only 47.25. It's still not optimal. It is in the top 15 in points. So, I mean, the Chase Elliott, if I'm going to fade off of anybody, I'm probably going to fade off a little bit of Chase Elliott. It's not a full fade. He probably becomes sub core for me. All right, Virginia Tech back on top of the field. All right, here we go. The Chase Elliott play is a little bit like the Tyler Reddick play. Flag on the play. What is this about? Do they get a first down, or do they have to kick again? I think it's delay game. Play game. Darn it. He's going to have to kick in. So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind the Chase Elliott play. I don't love it by any means. I'll probably be 20% ownership with Chase. And at $9,000, it becomes a little bit easier to fit. Bubba Wallace. Minus 27 on the cut line. Whew, after the first round that they had, which was phenomenal. And now he's minus 27 on the cut line. He's got to either win. They kicked again, and they got it. All right, good. Sorry. $8,700 starting in 7th. He's going to need to win, or get a lot of stage points in 1 and 2, and then make sure he finishes in the top 10. Well, his average finish here is 20.6. He does have a win here at Kansas, but it was, I can't remember, 2021. It's been a while. He was decent in practice. He was 4th in single lap, 15th in 10 lap consecutive average, but he's got an average finish of 20.6 and 15 total starts. It's a 19.7. So not great. Let's look at his practice speeds. They were decent early, then not so great, and then okay. Real hit or miss. And it's really hard to say if he was trying some different lines or doing whatever. He was not as fast as Larson or William Byron or those. So, and he's starting in 7th. I honestly think 7th place is probably the best he's going to finish. This the 2311 team just doesn't. And I know last week was kind of a one-off. The tires were just different than what they were used to. But their first round was really, really good. Well, we haven't been to a mile and a half in forever. I mean, I'm probably going to fade off of Bubba Wallace because it's going to take at least a top 3. That gets him to 47.25. And he would have to lead some laps, which, I mean, is possible. That puts him at 52 if he has 20 laps led. And he finishes in 3rd. But if he doesn't, it's not great. It's 47, and if he finishes where he starts, which would be an okay points day for the playoffs, that probably puts him back above the cut line. But then he's going to go to the Roval, and Bubba Wallace is not. He's gotten better at road courses, but he's not that good. Yeah, I think Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick are going to have to shoot for doing something drastic and crazy, and I just don't know if that ends up playing off super well for the two of them. We'll see. But I don't love it for DraftKings. So I think Bubba and Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick and William Byron probably all fall just into my sub-core grouping. I don't think they're a full-on fade, but I'm not sure I'm going to have a ton of ownership. One of the 4 of them are going to burn me. I do know that. That always happens. One of them's going to just happen to show up. And probably Chase Elliott more than maybe William Byron out of that grouping. But Ross Chastain next in line here. Also, negative 12 onto the cut line. So Ross is he's definitely got some more to do. Now, Ross is out of the ones that are on the outside looking in of the playoff points line. Ross is probably the better of the road course drivers. I mean, Reddick's actually pretty good too. But $8,500 for Ross Chastain starting in 9th. He was 31st in single lap, 17th in 10 lap consecutive average. He did win the fall race here last year. So with that being said, but other than that, it's been about just an 11.2 average finish, 11.5 average running position over the last 5 races. It's not that he's bad. It's just not that he's great. So I think it's kind of finish where you start type of a race for Ross. And looking at his practice speeds, they're at or about average throughout the run. There were a couple laps that were a little bit faster than the average, but there were some that were a little slower than the average. And you got to think, if there's 37 drivers, about 18th is about the average. So starting in 9th, it's just going to be real hard. I don't know if Ross goes up and leads a ton of laps here. But let's give him a 3rd. With 5 fast laps, no laps led, it's 49.2. I mean, that's okay. But he's going to need to lead 20 laps. That puts him at a 54.25 at $8,500. That would probably be close. It would be a good day. If you had him in your lineups, it's not awful. So I'll be I think Ross will probably end up being just under sub-core for me, or just below core to sub-core. So I've already got 4 or 5 guys that are probably going to be in that sub-core grouping already. And there's only about 4 or 5 drivers that I really, really like right now. And Josh Berry's not one. $8,200 starting in 13th. He's got an average finish of 21st. He was phenomenal at the Las Vegas Spring mile and a half track. On that, he has not been superb on mile and a half by any sense of the imagination. He was, like I said, 24th in single lap, 21st in 10 lap consecutive average. No top 5s, 1 top 10 over the last 4 starts at Kansas. He's only got 4 starts. He did finish 6th in the spring race here, but starting in 13th, and when we look at his practice speeds, he had 1-2 laps that were better than average, and he's starting 13th, average being 18th. So I think this is, at best, he finishes where he starts. And like I said, the Penske's setup just doesn't seem to be great. So we'll put him on the calculator just to see what it looks like. NC State's kicking or punting back to Tech. All right. 13th. I don't think he's going to lead 60 laps. We'll give him the token 5 laps for fast laps. Finishing 10th. It's in the top 15, but it's not close to being in that 55, maybe even 50-point range. He's going to need to get to top 5. Oh, he's going to get top 3. Yeah, I mean, top 3 gets him to 53 points with no laps led. I'm not sure that I like that for Josh Berry, to be perfectly honest. It's plausible, but I don't really think I expect them to do that. So he'll probably be outside of my subcore even. Chris Buescher, $8,000, has always typically run fairly well here. He has an average finish of 13th, but he was first in single lap. He was 10th in 10 lap consecutive average. With a 13th place average finish, he finished 8th here in the spring race. Chris Buescher also was the one that lost to Larson here by literally a hair, maybe 2 hairs, for the closest finish ever at a race. So he has been very consistent here. And starting 15th, we've got some room to run. And if we look at his practice speeds, they're at or just better than average. So, and he's starting just slightly better than average. So, all things being the same, probably going to be just better than average. So, probably finish kind of close to where he starts. I think because of his history here, I think he gets to a top 5. Not to a top 5, a top 10. I think it's going to be closer to like a 7th, maybe even a 6th. And, we'll give him, the token 5 laps. It's 47.25. It's not quite enough. But if he's able to make it to a top 5, that gets him real close. And if he gets to a top 5, maybe he does have some more fast laps. We'll give him 8. Still not into the optimal range, but he's real close to that 50 to 55 point range, so it's probably very, very close. I'll have some ownerships in Chris Buescher. I don't know if I love him for a solid core play, but it's real close. Next in line here, Alex Bowman starting in 17th. This is actually one of Alex Bowman's better tracks. He and Chase Elliott, these are the tracks that he and Chase Elliott just have these quiet days. You just don't ever realize that they're really there. They're not up there competing to lead laps, but they just quietly finish in the top 10 every time they go to these mile-and-a-half tracks. Texas, Charlotte, Miami, here, Vegas, they just quietly have top 10s. So then I say is Alex Bowman starting in 17th, where Chase Elliott starting in 4th. Now, Alex Bowman was not super great in practice. He was 34th in single lap, 22nd in 10 lap. He does have his 7th place average finish over the last 5 races. He's never won here before. I'm not looking for Alex Bowman to go win. And if we look at his practice speeds, he fired off slow, got to about average, and then got much better than average. I'm not sure if they were just missing something, came in and made an adjustment, and were able to go back out and fire off a little bit faster. But it definitely, I think Alex Bowman will eventually get to about a top 10. Starting in 17th, I don't know if that's going to be everything that we need. 17th finish, let's say he finishes 8th. 47.25, and he's got the 5 fast lap tokens. Not quite enough. It's close, though. What? A 7th? Probably a 6th. So he's probably going to be right there with Briscoe, or with Buescher, in my opinion. I don't love them for just an absolute must play. I also don't think they're an absolute must fade. I think they're probably in that 20-25% ownership range. I don't mind playing the Alex Bowman. I think it's a possibility of a good, consistent, solid top 10 type of day. Brad Kozlowski next in line here at 7,700, starting in 31st. Woo-wee, the Fords were just not great in practice or qualifying. Can they make it a turnaround and come back and make a decent day out of it? I mean, Chris Buescher, I think, might be one of the fastest Fords so far that we've seen, and he's starting in 15th. And actually had pretty decent speed in practice. But Brad was 32nd in single lap, 19th in 10 lap consecutive average. He's got a 19.6 average finish here. That's not great either, especially at $7,700. Let's look at his practice speeds. Well, you pretty much just kind of drawn a line over the average. So over the course of time, he was about average, which, I mean, that's better than where he's starting currently. If that's about an 18th. So if we put him on the chart and we start him in 31st, and we get him up to, let's say, 18th. It's 40.25. And I'm not sure he really, we'll leave him, we'll give everybody the token 5 fast laps just for whatever. So 18th is not going to quite cut it. It does put him in the top 15 in points, but not in the optimal range. He's going to need to get to a 12th, 13th, 14th, 13th. 13th place or better for Brad Kozlowski. Average finish of 19.6. I don't mind it at the bottom end of the core grouping, but just inside the core, it's a good solid 20-25% ownership for him. But I don't know if I really truly love a Brad K play, but I don't mind it either. I think his price tag is a little bit high, is I think where I'm kind of getting a little bit of a struggle with. But I don't love it, don't hate it. It'll be, I'll have 15 to 20% ownership. Kyle Busch. Oh boy, you know what? At this point, I think Kyle Busch would just love for the 2025 season to be over with, because it has just been rough for Kyle. I mean, even last week was just as rough. I mean, I need to keep track of how many times Kyle Busch has spun in a race. How many races it's been. It's well over half of the races he's spun or been involved in an accident. Sometimes not of his doing, but sometimes of his doing. So, but his practice speeds were, I mean, he fired off much slower than average. He got to the average by the end of it, which, okay, and starting in 29th, but talking about being consistent, though, and he's got an 18th place, which would be the average finish. So with 29th to 18th at $7,500, I don't know if he gets there. I don't think he does, because we just put Brad on this chart. It's 37.75. It doesn't even crack the top 15 in Draftkings points. And boy, Penn State's going to try to make a game of this. It's 17-10. They were tied at 3-3 at halftime. It's crazy. So I don't trust Kyle Busch is the problem at this point. I don't trust Kyle Busch, and I don't trust Richard Childress Racing at this point. They've just been consistently inconsistent and consistently not that great. I don't know if they get to an 18th. How far up does Kyle need to get? 12th? Now we give him the token 5. Yeah, it would need to be a 12th. So both he and Brad kind of need to finish top 15 to potentially be there. I trust Brad to probably get to a top 15 before I trusted Kyle Busch, and I really don't trust either one to really get there. So, sub-core, I don't even know if I put Kyle Busch in the sub-core group. But Ty Gibbs, $7,400. Ty Gibbs in the Xfinity car used to be so dominant at mile and a halfs and road courses, and now it is just an absolute struggle for Ty Gibbs. And I know everybody's saying that they have kind of mended the fences between he and Denny Hamlin, but I would also guarantee that either Ty Gibbs had a mental conversation with himself, or Grandpop pulled Ty Gibbs aside and said, "Hey, listen, yes, I know you want to win, but we've got 3 drivers that need to make it to the next round in the playoffs, and for the betterment of the company, if you don't have the speed, you need to let those guys get by." Now, is he going to do it on purpose? I mean, move over on purpose? No, but if they're behind him and they're faster, he's not going to pull a stunt like he did last week. He's going to let them take the spot, and he's going to live to fight another day. He also learned the hard way that if you don't, you could get a chrome horn and moved out of the way. And you saw what that did to Ty Gibbs' chances of winning. So I think Ty Gibbs got the message loud and clear. I don't think he's happy about it. He avoided the media pretty much all day today. In fact, he ran away from the media most of the day because I knew that he would be afraid that he would say something that he shouldn't say, which is probably the smart thing. So Ty Gibbs is starting in 8th. Absolutely. If he's got the faster car, he's going to stay out there. But if any of his teammates get close, it's not that he's going to roll over, but he's not going to fight them for position. He's not going to aero block his teammates. Now, he may aero block everyone else, but he's not going to do that to his teammates. So I think at best, he either wins or he is going to finish 15th, 18th, 20th. And his practice speeds were not that great. They were about average, and he's starting 10 spots better than average. So I don't like the Ty Gibbs play. I think he's in his own head at this point. And even if he goes and finishes in 4th, it's only 46.25 points. Now, we're real close to that line for 46 points to be enough at 7,400, but it's probably not enough to be optimal. It's top 15. But I don't think he gets to a 4th place finish, to be perfectly honest. I think he's in his own head at this point. I think he's probably like, let's just get this year over with, and hopefully one of the Joe Gibbs cars can win. Austin Cindric, probably one of the faster Fords in practice, and he was not that fast. He was 20th in single lap, 13th in 10 lap consecutive average, $7,200. Starting in the 26th position, he has a negative 1.3. Oh, intercept. Nope. A negative 1.3 Draftkings average for Kansas over the last 5 races. That's not good. 28.8 average finish. Kansas and Austin Cindric do not get along. But his practice speeds were actually fairly decent. I will give him that much. But the history here for Austin Cindric, and to be perfectly honest, the history at 1.5 miles for Austin Cindric has not been very good. So I do not expect a whole lot of Austin Cindric. He is starting in the 26th. I mean, we'll give him the 14th place finish and see if it does anything, but I don't think it's going to actually be enough. It's 43.25 at $7,200. It might work, but so far, I don't know if I like the Austin Cindric play. I don't know if I like the Kyle Busch play. And as we've seen, this is much more of a track position style race. And I don't know where Austin Cindric makes up track position, other than maybe on pit stops, because the Penske cars were just not great in practice, and they're consistently not great here at Kansas. So he's negative 19 to the cut line. He's going to have to pull some strategy to get a better finish. So, he's going to need to get to what? 12th? 10th? Without leading any laps? So 11th or 10th? Maybe he falls into it with strategy, but I don't think he does it on speed by any means. Carson Chaos Hocevar. $7,100 starting in the 6th position. He was 25th in single lap. He was 34th in 10-lap consecutive average. Finished in 26th. Blaney is in a backup car. Yes. At least that's what he had stated in his post-wreck interview, that they were going to a backup car. So that was the last I heard. I have not been on Twitter. I've been watching college football since practice got over with. But he did say when he left the infield care center in his interview that they were going to a backup. I mean, I'm not sure that's any better, because he wrecked his primary, and his primary was not very fast and blew a tire. So, like I said, I don't mind the Logano or Blaney play, and you could play both of them. The problem is you are now limited in funds on taking. You're only going to be able to take one top driver. You're going to only be able to take a Larson or a Hamlin or one of those. And then it begins to really narrow. Hey, what? Oh well. One of my TVs just cut out on me. Oh well. Carson Osvar starting in 6th, 25th, 34th. I mean, this kid is all over the place, and his practice speeds are all over the place. I mean, he's 32.5 by lap 4, back down to a 31, back up to a 32.2, and there is no consistency here. And he will absolutely be the one that will cause havoc. Where do you go, Virginia Tech? Looks like they're going to get the win. Beautiful. $7,100 starting in 6th. I mean, he's going to have to lead 40 laps and finish in first to get to 64. If he leads 40 laps and he falls to 8th, 48 points. So, pretty much going to need to lead 40 laps and be in the top 5. And honestly, I don't know about what to even think or make of Carson Osvar. I will put him in a couple of lineups just in case, but I'm not going to have very much ownership in Carson Osvar. Scares me too much. I mean, he's got a 25.5 average finish at Kansas. He's always had speed. He just can't seem to ever get to the finish. Ryan Preece at 6,900. Starting in 19th, he was 29th in single lap, 36th in 10-lap consecutive average. Ooh, practice speeds were not good for Ryan Preece. Yeah, the Fords just struggled in practice. I don't know if they come back and race better, but Ryan Preece has got a 19.2 average finish, and he's starting in 19th. And he had a total of, 12 laps at practice? 15 total laps at speed, only 12 laps. So not a whole lot of practice laps, and he was not great. So from 19th, I mean, even if he finishes in 9th, it's a 47. That probably puts him in the optimal lineup. But, I mean, anything worse than that, and it's not. So he has to have a top 10. And I don't know if I really love the Ryan Preece for a top 10. So more than likely, he will be out of any of my core groups. Michael McDowell will definitely be out of my core groups because they went through inspection, passed, then made an adjustment, and then failed twice in inspection. So not only is he going to have to start rear of the field, so 35th or 36th, he's going to have to do a drive-through penalty, and not only a drive-through penalty, it's a drive-through penalty, stop-and-go penalty. They have laid the hammer down on Michael McDowell. He will go at minimum 1 lap down in the first 5 laps, potentially even 2 laps down, and that could be a death sentence starting in 21st, when he has an average finish of 22.8 and not having all the penalties. So it will be an absolute uphill climb for Michael McDowell. I will be a complete fade. His practice speeds actually were not all that bad. That part I will give him. But as far as anything else, he's going to be a lap down, maybe 2 laps down in the first 5 laps, and digging back from that for a track that sometimes doesn't have a whole lot of cautions, but sometimes it does. And you just hope you're not one of the cars involved in the caution. So I'm going to be a fade off of Michael McDowell. If it comes back to burn me, it comes back to burn me. AJ Allmendinger at $6,600 starting in 20th. He was actually really good in practice. He was 15th on single lap, second in the 10-lap consecutive average. Now his average finishes here is a 27.3, and he has been super inconsistent on the mile and a halfs, along with like a Carson Hocevar. They just can't seem to figure out a way to finish these things off. They have good speed, they run pretty well, and they either get involved with somebody else or they've got pit road issues. The mile and under tracks, AJ seems to do much better at. And look at his practice speeds. They're almost, they're really good at the beginning, and they just are very average through the rest of it. And he's kind of starting in that average spot of 20th. I think at best he's an 8th place finish, maybe an 11th. It's 42.35. The optimal line for him at 6,600 is probably 45. I will take a few shots on AJ and I'll spread it out, but it's not one that I am like, ooh, I'm going to take Spain J. Allmendinger. I'd probably trust the AJ Allmendinger play more than I would trust the Kyle Busch play. I also don't love either of those plays, but it's going to be a Larson Blaney, Logano with an AJ Allmendinger and an Austin Dillon and somebody else. And it's going to be 3 random guys in those 3. It could also be mixed or match 1 or 2 of those, or like a Denny Hamlin and Logano and Blaney, or I don't know. It's going to be a little hard to figure it out, and I have not started to put lineups together to get it completely figured out. But hold on for me 1 second. I want to get back to all the games. All right, Georgia's still down by 3, and Oregon is still up by a touchdown. And my Hokies won. All right. Austin Dillon. Starting in 16th, he was 26th in single lap, 35th in 10-lap consecutive average, a 20.4 average finish at Kansas. No top 5s, 1 top 10 in the last 5 races, 6 top 10s over 24. So he's not very good here. Starting in 16th, I think at best he's going to finish in maybe 12th, and I don't think that's going to be enough. 16th to 13th is only 34 points. 12th is 36.25. Yeah, I'm going to probably fade off of Austin Dillon. If it burns me, it burns me, but I don't like his starting spot, and his average finish is 20. So practice speeds were not that great. Eric Jones, next in line here, $6,300, starting in 10th. I didn't even realize he starting that far up. 6th in single lap, okay. 20th in 10-lap consecutive average. So he fell off a little bit. Look at his practice speeds. They run pretty good at the beginning, and then they go to the average. Now, he was in Group 1, and that was a little bit slow. That was a little bit faster at the beginning of the run than once the track got rubbered up. Everybody kind of slowed up a little bit. That's why his speeds are so fast at the beginning. But he does come back and fire off fairly consistent towards the end of that run. But starting in 10th, I think he's just starting too far up for me to really want to have a lot of ownership. The legacy guys have been running pretty well recently. Last week was not good. But other than that, before that, they've been running kind of top 10s. The mile and a half program has still been okay. I just think starting in 10th, for him to get up to, he's going to need a 5th? Yeah, he's going to need to at least get to 5th. We'll give him the token 5 fast laps. Yeah, that puts him over probably the optimal line. But I don't know if Eric Jones has got a top 5 in him. At least not in the speed in practice. He doesn't. Where John Hunter Nemechek starting in 25th, I think could probably maybe make it up to, 15th? He's got a 17.7 average finish over the last 5 races here. Now, his practice speeds were, once again, he fired off really fast and did the same thing as Eric Jones and slowed up and then kind of picked up again towards the tail end. As long as he fires off pretty quick like this at the beginning of the race, he'll be okay. And it looks like everybody's got this little hump between lap 3 and lap 4. So I don't know if there was something that was causing that issue, but the average actually bumps a little bit there too. So quite interesting. Just noticed that. But starting in 25th, if he gets to his average finish of 17th for Kansas, that's 35. That's not going to be enough. But if he gets to his average over the last 5 races this year on traditional ovals, it's a 12th. That does put him there. So because of where John Hunter Nemechek is starting, I actually like the John Hunter Nemechek play starting in 25th. Don't love it, but I don't mind it. I like it better than the one starting one spot further up in SVG, starting in 24th. We're still at a point this year where SVG is still learning this, and SVG has one start at Kansas, and he finished 20th, and that was in the spring. Okay, and if we look at his practice speeds, I'm impressed. He actually had, I think, how many laps? 35 laps of practice. That is up there with one of the higher lap counts for practice. But he was at average or worse than average the entire time. Now he's starting worse than average, but he's not starting that far back. I think at best we're looking at we'll give him the 20th place finish that he got in the spring, but that's not going to be enough. That's only 27 points. And I think that's being overly generous. I don't think he finishes that high up. So I'm going to continue with the fade off of SVG for this year until next week when we get to the Roval. Then he'll have like 80% ownership. I'm kind of halfway joking, but probably not. It could be that much. He's just that darn good. Noah Gragson at $5,900 starting in 14th. That's actually a really good starting spot. But if we look, this is one of Noah's better tracks, 17.5 average finish. We're not celebrating the 17.5, but for Noah this year, that's actually pretty good. Because it's been a rough year for Noah. Starting in 14th, though, I don't know if I'd trust Noah to stay up there, especially when his lap times are about average. And there it is again. There's that little tick. I don't know what happened in Group 1 between lap 3 and 4. Everybody's got this little hump. But then he just kind of runs average. Well, he's starting better than average. So if he finishes 17th, he's going to get 25 points. And that's 20 off of the optimal. I just think he's starting too far up. So Noah's going to be a fade for me. Daniel Suarez, $5,800, starting in 30th. The problem is I haven't seen anybody back here that I really like other than maybe John Hunter Nemechek and maybe Eric Jones. Daniel Suarez starting in 30th. 21st in single lap, 27th in 10 lap consecutive average, a 21st place average finish. Let's look at his speed. Right at about the average, or slightly worse. But he is starting worse than average, so that's a help. Let's put him on the chart. Starting in 30th. Get to your average of 21st. Now, he has had a rough go of it lately. His current trend line is not good. It's a 31.6. We won't look at that. But even a 21st only gets you to 30 points. That's still not even the top 15 that you would need. I'm telling you, I keep waiting for somebody to pop off this page that I'm like, okay, I really like that person. And so far, John Hunter Nemechek, maybe. I mean, I'll take some small shots with Daniel Suarez. I'll take some small shots with Eric Jones. I'll take maybe some small shots with Austin Dillon, but Suarez burned you last week? Yeah, I mean, it's just... I mean, it's tough. He doesn't have a ride for next year. He's trying his best to try to make something out of nothing. They've piecemealed out his pick. Anybody that's any decent on Trackhouse right now everybody's going to Ross. All the big resources are going to Ross because that's the only one that's left in the playoffs at this point. So, I mean, even SVG, that's another reason not to be on the SVG thing, is you don't have the best pit crew. You don't have the best engineers. All the engineering, all the timing, all the resources for Trackhouse are going to Ross Chastain right now. And if anything, the second one is going to be SVG because SVG needs to learn to get better at these tracks, whereas Daniel is not going to be in contract with them next year. So what does it do to help them have Daniel a great finish? It doesn't. So Daniel is literally on an island by himself at this point. And it sucks because Daniel's a good guy. It doesn't really deserve that, but I mean, that's why he's got a 31.6 average finish over the last 5 traditional ovals this year. It's just not a good spot for Daniel right now. Now, hopefully he finds a team, but more likely, I mean, if it's not the 7, I don't know if there's another team that might have an opening. I think Daniel would probably go to an Xfinity team before he went to like a Rick Ware racing car. So I think Daniel might be he's definitely on the outside looking in, unless he can pull a rabbit out of the hat at this point. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting in 18th. I mean, once again, these guys that are typically, I mean, they're $5,700 for a reason. He was 28th in single lap. He's got an average finish of 19.6. He finished 19th in this race last year. His practice speeds were about average, so he's probably going to finish at best where he starts, unless we have some craziness that happens. And Kansas does have sometimes a little bit of craziness involved, but I mean, maybe Ricky gets to a 15th. Is that even enough at 5 fast laps? I don't think so. It's 33.25. It's not even the top 15. And that's going to be the tough part, is we literally keep going through all these guys, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe, but you're starting too far up. And you don't have, I mean, it's consistent. His trend line is a 25.4. So I don't trust the Ricky Stenhouse. So, I mean, at this point, it's going to be find your core 10 guys, and then you're just literally going to have to like stab in the dark for these other drivers. Zane Smith, $5,500. I mean, so here's maybe a chance for something. Zane Smith, $5,500, starting in 28th. He was second in single lap and first in 10 lap consecutive average. He was actually really fast in practice. He does have an average finish of 18.3. Now, it's the sample size is not huge. It's 3 starts instead of 5. He finished 16th here in the spring. But at $5,500, let's look at his practice speeds. They were good for the first 10 laps, and then it fell off, and then he kind of came back to the average. All right, so not super great, but he's starting 28th. If he can get to 14th, I mean, I know his average finish is 18. The trend line is at 17, so improve by 3 spots gets you to a 45.25. That's enough to possibly put you there. So I think I definitely like the Zane Smith call. The problem is he was so fast in practice, that's going to pull some ownership. And I just, buyer beware, it's going to pull some ownership because of how well he practiced. I don't think, because it was in Group 1, I don't think the true realistic number is at that speed. So I'll take some Zane Smith, and because at this point we got to find somebody that's worthwhile in taking that's not starting too far up. And so far, Zane is probably the one that's actually got some speed, that's got some place differential movement. I mean, just like this, Todd Gillen, starting in 23rd. Decent in practice again, 9th in single lap, 14th in 10 lap, not quite as good as his teammate. A 20.4 average finish for Kansas, though. 7 total starts, 21.4. He's only got 2 of 7 races that he's finished in the top 20. When we looked at his practice speeds, they're at best average. I mean, he fired off pretty good, but then fell below the average. So don't love that by any means. And starting in 23rd, if he just gets to his average of 20th, it's not enough. I mean, he would need to finish 12th to get to 42. And I mean, sure, that's a maybe. So, I mean, I'll take Todd Gillen in 2 to 4 of my lineups and mix and match him with other drivers. It's not a complete out fade, but I'm not putting him into a ton of my lineups by any means. Same thing with Justin Haley, starting in 22nd. He's got an average finish of 24.2 here. Over 9 starts, he's got a 27.1, which is even worse. Practice speeds were okay. It was 7th in single lap. Remember, all these guys were in the first group, though. First group fires off faster, then it slows up, and that's why he's 23rd on the 10-lap consecutive average. And if we look at his speeds, yep, the first 10 laps, he fired off real quick because the track hadn't gotten rubbered in yet. Once he got rubbered in, he was slightly worse than average. And he started starting slightly worse than average. So, I mean, at best, he's going to finish 20. He's going to start 22nd and maybe finish 17th. Maybe. I mean, that's 31 points. Cole Custer starting in 27th. 11th in single lap. He was in Group 1 again. 7th in 10 lap consecutive average. Average finish 24.5. 8 total starts here. He's got a 19.5. So, all right, maybe we get start 27th and finish in 19th. Once again, practice speeds decent at the start, and then they fall off once the track got rubbered in. So that single speed average is not a great indicator, especially from Group 1. So if he starts 27th and can get up to, what did I say he needed to get to? Hold on, I'll look. Cole Custer, if he can get up to 19. That's his career history average. On 18th is 34. So he's going to need to at least get to 18th. Well, we didn't give him the token 5 fast laps. I'm not sure he gets 5 fast laps, to be honest, but we'll give it to him. It's still not optimal, but it's top 15. I could see taking a couple shots with Cole. Maybe Riley Herbst, but Riley Herbst hit the wall. I don't know how much damage he's got. I don't know if he's going to have to go to the rear. He's already starting in the rear, but he's just been super consistently bad all year. Ooh, Penn State close to tying it up with 30 seconds left. They need to kick this extra point to tie it up. And then we're probably going to go to overtime in Happy Valley. Oh, they almost blocked it. Oh. So looks like we're going to overtime at Penn State. I think Alabama's still up on Georgia, but Georgia's got the ball. Riley Herbst. Pope, you still out there? Or are you too busy enthralled with college football? Riley Herbst starting in 32nd. He was 27th in single lap, 23rd in 10 lap. Super inconsistent. I mean, he was in the first group, and he still didn't fire off all that good and just got worse from there. I just cannot trust Riley Herbst at all at this point. Even if he gets to his average finish of 25th, it's not going to be enough. And I think it would be a miraculous for him to get better than 25th. It's 24 points. I don't see it happening. Maybe Ty Dillon. But even then, we look at his averages, and his lifetime average at Kansas is a 22. Starting 33rd, I mean, he's 4,900. Practice speeds were 10th and 11th. Okay, but he was in Group 1. So he fired off fast and then fell just below the average. Well, I need him to get to the average. I need him to get to 20th. Let's see what that does. If you start in 30th, 33rd, and you get to 20th. Is that going to be enough? Probably not, but we'll see. 36. Give him the 5 fast laps. I don't think he gets to. 38.25. I mean, it's close to the 40. And at this point, he's only got to get to 40 at 4,900. It's not going to take a whole lot for Ty Dillon to get there. So, sure. Put Ty Dillon in a few lineups. Well, we've got about 10 drivers that we're going to put in a few lineups at this point. And Zane Smith might be the only one that I really like to put in more than a few lineups. Cody Ware, no, I just don't have any interest. 30th and 30th. And he was in Group 1. And we look at these speeds, and it's just abysmal. It's bad. We need Cody Ware to be in a super high attrition race and a ton of cautions, and him not be one of them. He was 2 of them last week. It's bad. JJ Yaley is also in this race, and he was starting 36. Ryan Blaney starting 37th. And JJ Yaley was 36th in speed, because Ryan Blaney was 37th in speed. So, JJ Yaley, no. I'm not even going to talk about him, even though I just did. But I don't like the Cody Ware starting in 34th, that's for sure. We would need to see 15 guys wreck. And even then, I'm not sure he gets up there. All right. We're kind of towards the end, and looks like we're going to have some overtime football coming up here shortly at the end of these games. So I'm going to let everybody get off of here and go watch some college football endings. But Ryan Blaney, probably, I mean, he's going to be super heavily owned. It's buyer beware. You're going to be with the crowd or against the crowd. And if Ryan Blaney goes and finishes top 10, he's going to be in the optimal lineup. Same thing with Joey Logano, same boat, same story. But can you end up running a Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and a Kyle Larson, and a Denny Hamlin, and a Christopher Bell? It's going to be only 3 of them. And then you're going to have to piecemeal the rest of it. And maybe it's a Zane Smith with I'm not sure you can go all the way to Brad Keselowski. I think he's too expensive. But I don't mind any of the 4 that are up here. They're all going to be probably pretty heavily owned, though. And I think Christopher Bell ends up getting a decent amount of ownership. But then, once again, I think it's, at best, 1, maybe 2 drivers starting in the top 10. So be picky and choosy. And then the rest of them are going to be, maybe an Alex Bowman. I don't mind the Alex Bowman play. I don't mind the Chris Buescher play. I do not like Kyle Busch. I like the Zane Smith play. Ryan Preece, I think, is starting too far up. John Hunter could be in play. Cindric, maybe. But like I said, all the Penskes, buyer beware. They're on the struggle bus this weekend, especially compared to last weekend. Suarez is a big time maybe, but it's an uphill battle. We just discussed it. Michael McDowell is going to go at least 1, maybe 2 laps down in the beginning. Don't like that. Riley Herbst, don't trust it. AJ, he just doesn't. He ends up screwing these things up at 1.5 miles. Josh Berry starting too far up. Noah Gragson starting too far up. Todd Gillen probably starting too far up. Eric Jones is definitely starting too far up. Carson Chaos Hocevar starting too far up. Ty Gibbs, I think he's in a bad mental headspace at this point because of his teammates. Bubba Wallace, probably starting too far up. William Byron, maybe, but he's too expensive. Briscoe, I think, is starting from the pole. Could lead a ton of laps, could be there, but all it takes is 1 small slip, and Briscoe is on the outside looking in. The same thing could be said about Denny, but still at this point, I trust Denny more than I Chase Briscoe, but I don't mind the Chase Briscoe play. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting too far up. SVG doesn't know these 1.5 miles well enough yet. Ty Dillon's in play. Austin Dillon, nope. Justin Haley, nope. Cole Custer, big maybe, but doubtful. Cody Ware, no way. We don't have a whole lot of choices. It's going to be a lot of It's going to be a lot of Blaney, Hamlin, Logano, Larson, Bell, with a lot of mix and match of other people. About 10 other drivers. So there's realistically only about 15 drivers to mix and match from. The rest of them, I think, it's junk. And I know there's going to be one or two that are probably going to end up burning me. The problem is none of them on practice speeds, averages, even the trend lines don't show up as being even an okay play. So we got some work to do for tomorrow, that's for sure. I think the dominator is pretty easy to figure out. It's going to be Hamlin, a Larson, a Bell type, maybe a William outside shot. It's a William Byron or a Chase Elliott, but I think the win is going to come from Joe Gibbs or Hendrick Motorsports. So that's my thoughts about the race. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Next weekend we have the Roval. That is a Sunday race. We will be live again next Saturday night at 9:00 for NASCAR and football and all of the things. So tune in next week. Good luck if you happen to do well in any of your tournaments and I was able to help you out at all. Please send me a message. I would love to hear about the successes, and we'll see everyone next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great time. And Blaney, Little Rainy, enjoy the race at Kansas tomorrow. Have a good time. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Gentlemen, start your engines. 40 cars coming to life.
Can you still pace the field? Yes. Love it. Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W's, so gotta be around the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You are fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby! Really proud of you, man. You drove your butt off tonight. We had the best start here, bud. Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job. Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend. What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.